My name is Don Marsh, and I'm a member of CENSE. I'd like to share a critical look at PSE's Energize Eastside project. Energize Eastside is a proposal to upgrade an existing 115 kilovolt transmission line to 230 kilovolts. The line will run for some 18 miles through 4 Eastside cities: Redmond, Bellevue, Newcastle, and Renton. PSE will run 6 power wires plus 2 data cables on steel poles up to 130 feet high. We would like to show you a photo of what that would look like, but PSE says there are no poles in our area that are currently that tall. To give a sense of the scale, here's a person compared to one of these poles. 2-story houses will be dwarfed by the pole. Here is the wooden H pole that we have along the line today. At 50 feet high, they aren't exactly pretty, but they aren't so tall that you can see them from far away. 70 feet is the height of a tall tree. The new poles and wires will extend far above what remains of the tree canopy, making this transmission line a prominent feature visible from miles around. People living and working in downtown Bellevue will see Mount Rainier and the power line. It will affect all residents in our area, not just those living in the shadow of these huge poles. In order to safely build and operate the new high-voltage line, PSE will have to cut or destroy nearly 8,000 mature trees. Bellevue is trying to restore an urban tree canopy that has fallen below the coverage level recommended by the American Forests Organization, and this plan will be a huge setback for those efforts. CENSE is an all-volunteer group of hundreds of concerned citizens who oppose PSE's plan. We are the Coalition of Eastside Neighborhoods for Sensible Energy, and we believe that there are less expensive solutions to our energy needs that provide reliable electricity while protecting our neighborhoods and the environment. Once people realize how visible this line will be, they want to be reminded of where it will go. When we say it will mostly follow the existing corridor, people aren't always clear where that is, because the existing poles aren't so obvious from several blocks away. That will change rather dramatically with the new line, so let's take a quick tour of the route. PSE is considering 2 different options, which are almost identical except for a possible deviation from the current corridor through Factoria instead of the Eastgate and Somerset neighborhoods. Starting in Renton, the line goes past Willows Creek Park and then turns south past the Grass Lawn neighborhood, Rose Hill Middle School, and the Swan Lake neighborhood. Next it enters North Bellevue, running through the Bridle Trails, Trails End, and Shadowwood neighborhoods. It goes past Viewpoint Park before crossing the 520 highway, and then continues through the Crossroads and Glendale neighborhoods. In South Bellevue, it goes through the Glendale Country Club and Kelsey Creek Greenbelt, as well as the Westlake Hills and Sunset neighborhoods. Then PSE has a choice. They can use the western route, running through the Woodridge and Factoria neighborhoods, passing in front of Newport High School, or they can go through the Eastgate and Somerset neighborhoods, also passing over Tyee Middle School, Somerset Rec Club, and Forest Hill Park. Either route would impact the Monthaven, Westwood Highlands, and Newport Hills neighborhoods. Newcastle is next. The line passes through the Donegal and Olympus neighborhoods and close to Lake Bourne and May Creek Park. In Renton, the line passes through 4 neighborhoods: May Creek, Kennydale, Highlands Park, and Liberty Ridge. It also goes by the Sierra Heights Park, Honeydew Creek, Renton Technical College, the Cedar River Trail, and Philip Arnold Park. It is extremely rare for a utility to construct an overhead 230 kilovolt transmission line through so many established residential neighborhoods. In fact, we haven't found an equivalent example anywhere in the United States during the last couple of decades. Actually, we haven't found a project like this anywhere in the world. We think it's appropriate to demand an unquestionable burden of proof before we inflict this project on so many of our residents. We will show you PSE's data and their argument, and you can decide if they've met this standard. Here is an outline of the problems we want to discuss. Energize Eastside is too big, it's too expensive, it's not necessary, and better options are available. We'll delve into each of these points in more detail. In addition to being physically out of scale with residential neighborhoods and the overall landscape of the East Side, Energize Eastside is out of scale with our actual needs. A 230 kilovolt line can carry 4 to 5 times as much power as our current transmission line. Do we need that much capacity? Probably not for 100 years, and we'll show you why we think that a little later. Our next concern is cost. The upfront cost of Energize Eastside is approximately $200 million. This cost will be paid by PSE's customers in the form of higher electricity bills for the next 40 years. PSE already charges the highest residential rates in the state compared to providers serving at least 20,000 customers. When we factor in a generous rate of return on PSE's investment, the company's customers will pay about $500 million for Energize Eastside over the line's lifetime. Let's talk about whether we need this. CENSE volunteers have spent thousands of hours trying to understand the necessity of this project. We've studied PSE's planning documents, met with company representatives, interviewed industry experts, tracked energy trends, and we still can't justify PSE's forecast. Maybe you've seen this forecast graph, which PSE has made the centerpiece of their campaign for Energize Eastside. It shows demand for electricity measured in megawatts steadily increasing from 2012 through 2022. PSE says there's a problem when demand exceeds the capacity of the company's system, as shown by the dashed line. The company implies that power outages will occur when these lines cross. However, there are some important things PSE neglects to say in their public presentations of this graph. For example, this system capacity line is not normal system capacity. Normal system capacity is actually 1,600 megawatts, as we illustrate in orange at the top of this rescaled graph. The lower capacity number is what would happen in an extreme emergency if half of the transformers that serve the East Side were offline. That's not just a rare event. It has, to our knowledge, never happened before. Likewise, this demand trend is not normal everyday consumption. PSE is showing the highest electricity demand that happens during the coldest winter weekday, a situation that happens only a few hours each year. What are the odds that half of PSE's transformers will break during the few hours we need them most? It's a situation that may never occur during our lifetimes. But even if it does, we won't automatically have a power outage. PSE's documents say that the system would become less flexible. Instead of a power outage, there would be an increased chance of an outage if some other catastrophe happens at the same time. Finally, we are perplexed by PSE's projection of demand growing at an average rate of 1.7% per year. This is contrary to trends at the national, regional, and local level, all of which show electricity demand falling during the past decade. I'll show you a few of those graphs. This is a graph from the 10K form PSE files with the Securities and Exchange Commission. It shows PSE's energy deliveries for the last 7 years. During that time, there was an average decline of 0.9% per year. But that's for our whole system, PSE says. We admit that the overall trend is declining, but that's not what is happening on the East Side. To verify PSE's claim, we went searching for signs of that robust East Side growth. We found this graph on Bellevue's Environmental Stewardship website. The bars in this chart show electricity consumption for different sectors within Bellevue, with different colors for the years 2011 through 2014. The two most prominent sectors are the commercial sector on the left and residential on the right. We expected Bellevue to be one of the fastest growing centers of demand, but consumption is mostly flat, except the commercial sector, where consumption has been falling at an impressive rate of 2.4% per year. This contradicts the notion that downtown businesses are driving huge increases in electricity consumption. Note the source of this data is PSE. CENSE believes that declining electricity use at the local, regional, and national level is real, and a significant fact to consider when planning new infrastructure. PSE seems to think these trends are a temporary glitch, and we will soon return to growth patterns that were last seen a decade ago. So let's look at PSE's latest data. This is a graph that incorporates data that PSE is using to prepare their 2015 Integrated Resource Plan. The data points for 2012 through 2014 are actual measured values rather than PSE's previous projections, and they are 8 to 13% lower than PSE predicted 3 years ago. Let that sink in for a moment. PSE was predicting just a couple of years into the future, and their predictions were off by double-digit percentages. How confident should we be about their predictions for 10 years from now? Here's more evidence that PSE doesn't know what's going on. For their 2015 plan, PSE increased the predicted annual rate of growth for the East Side to 2.5% per year. Compared to their previous 1.7% growth rate, that is a 47% increase in only 3 years. To put it in a different perspective, 2.5% is 5 times higher than the rate of growth Seattle City Light is predicting for Seattle. We know that downtown Bellevue has some big projects coming online, but is the East Side as a whole growing 5 times faster than Seattle? With these new numbers, PSE's updated forecast is that demand will exceed capacity in 2020, 3 years later than they initially predicted. That's pretty amazing. 3 years have passed since PSE's last forecast, and now the problem date has moved forward 3 years. The urgency to build this project immediately is gone. In fact, the prudent thing to do would be to wait another 3 years and see if the problem date moves forward again. At this rate, we will never need Energize Eastside. But now we have time to be proactive about this. There are steps we can take now to guarantee that a 230 kilovolt line is not needed for at least a decade, if ever. Let's take a look at better solutions to our energy needs that will protect our wallets, our neighborhoods, and the environment. Energize Eastside was designed from the start to address 2 problems: growth on the east side and transmission of electricity to Canada, which is required by the Columbia River Treaty. PSE has downplayed this regional aspect of the project, but there is plenty of documentation that shows this was an important concern when the project was conceived. Fortunately for us, there are solutions for both the local and regional issues that are less expensive and less destructive than Energize Eastside. For the local issue, PSE hired a contractor named E3 to study how much energy could be saved using alternatives to new poles and wires. E3 found 56 megawatts of cost-effective savings using a combination of electrical efficiency, distributed generation, and demand-side resources. 56 megawatts is about 8% of PSE's emergency system capacity, so it's a significant finding. The savings would reduce customer costs by $40 million compared to the status quo, and they would have an environmental benefit. A better solution for Canadian electricity was studied by an industry consortium called Columbia Grid. For some years, Columbia Grid's preferred plan was to upgrade wires on an existing transmission line through the east side, owned by Seattle City Light. Since the poles could be left as they are, this project had an estimated cost of $16 million, less than a tenth the cost of Energize Eastside. And since PSE's customers wouldn't have to pay most of the bill for this option, it would cost us next to nothing. By every conceivable measure, the wire upgrade is better than Energize Eastside for transmitting electricity to Canada. It has better transmission capacity, lower risk of energy traffic jams, it doesn't require new infrastructure to be built through our cities, and it's a bargain. There is no technical reason why this project can't be pursued other than corporate wheeling and dealing by PSE. If it were built, a large portion of the Canadian power flow that could theoretically cause stress on PSE's system will flow on other wires. CENSE estimates the reduction on PSE's line will be at least 35 megawatts, about 5% of emergency system capacity. Here is an updated forecast that shows what would happen if the solutions identified by E3 and Columbia Grid are pursued. PSE's current infrastructure would then be sufficient to meet our needs until at least 2026. We can monitor demand trends for a decade. If it looks like we might have an issue after that, a variety of technology alternatives are likely to make poles and wires seem as quaint as a rotary telephone in a smartphone era. With such good options available, it's fair to wonder why PSE is pushing this project so vigorously. Well, they have the best motivation a private corporation can have: money. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission will allow PSE to collect a rate of up to 10.3% on their investment. That's 10.3% on $200 million for 40 years. PSE also gets revenue from a firm contract to deliver 130 megawatts of electricity to Canada. Furthermore, the company was just approved to deliver electricity to the lucrative California energy market starting in October 2016. All of these revenue opportunities require PSE to have a 230 kilovolt line running north and south to deliver their product. PSE already has a 230 kilovolt line, but it leases the line from the Bonneville Power Administration. The lease expires in 2018, and we've heard that Bonneville might want that line back. If PSE is able to secure a new lease, it's going to cost the company considerably more than their current lease. If PSE can get its customers to buy a new line, that's pretty compelling for the company. PSE is aiming to complete Energize Eastside construction by 2018, but they can't afford for it to slip even by a few months, or they may have to give up contracts associated with that 230 kilovolt resource. Is it any wonder they seem desperate to push forward with this project, even when citizens ask for reasonable delays to get an independent assessment of the need? Now, if you're worried about what happens if PSE loses the lease on this 230 kilovolt line, don't be. The same electricity will flow to the east side, as well as California and Canada, no matter who controls the line. It's merely a question of who collects the tolls. I'd like to read you a quote from an article in the Wall Street Journal that came out the same year that Energize Eastside was announced. Quote, "Americans are using more gadgets, televisions, and air conditioners than ever before. But oddly, their electricity use is barely growing, posing a daunting challenge for the nation's utilities. Some companies are pouring money into high-voltage transmission lines, superhighways for electricity, because federal regulators are allowing them to collect above-average returns from customers. We think it's reasonable to ask if this might be happening in our case. If there's even a remote possibility that PSE is taking advantage of us, what can we do about it?" CENSE tried to file a complaint with the state attorney general. He replied that this is really the jurisdiction of PSE's regulator, the Utilities and Transportation Commission. So we complained to them. The commissioners told us the UTC does not substitute its judgment for the utilities management, but as a long-standing practice conducts after-the-fact review. In other words, the UTC will look at the project after it is built to determine whether it is reasonable to charge PSE's customers for it. Even if customers are relieved of that obligation, it will be small comfort for those who have to live with the results for decades. The UTC referred us back to the City of Bellevue, which is the lead permitting agency for the project. We have had numerous meetings and communications with the city, but so far we've seen few concrete results. Council members appear to be worried about the consequences of challenging a $9 billion company headquartered across the street from City Hall. Our conclusion is that we have to take this to citizens. Only citizens have the power to convince council members to oppose this project. Energized voters motivate politicians even more than a potential lawsuit from PSE. With elections now half a year away, CENSE will look for candidates that support our goals. You are an important part of this effort. Please visit our website at CENSE.org. You can sign up for our newsletter, donate to our cause, and find out about CENSE meetings. The website has links that make it easy for you to write a letter to your city council or newspaper. Here is the choice for our future. On the left is a photo we found in Bellevue's Economic Development Plan. It's a nice picture because it shows the beauty of our residential neighborhoods, abundant trees, and a spectacular backdrop uninterrupted by ugly infrastructure. Contrast this with the photo on the right, which I took last summer on the interurban bike trail in Renton. Through diligent civic action and citizen involvement, we can preserve the beauty of East Side cities for our children and grandchildren. On the other hand, if we sit back and let the bottom line of a private corporation dictate our future, our kids will see more scenes like I saw on the bike trail. We know this will be a difficult challenge, but CENSE is committed to pursuing every available legal and political avenue in order to achieve a better outcome for the East Side. We hope you'll join us.